Welcome to Motorcycle Transmission 3. I'm your host, Tom Bieler. If you want to know more about me, go to homeagain.com. But right now, we're talking to Mr. John Ruffner. Hey, John, thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Now, we met about a year and a half ago, I think.
Yeah.
I was, I think, out in the shop, and you stopped to look at a bike I had out front.
Yeah, was it that little 250, was it?
It was a KZ250, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And you were looking for a different bike at the time, though.
Well, I'm always looking for bikes. If I see something on the side of the road, I don't care what it is. I got to stop and look at it, check it out.
I can be the same way sometimes, yeah.
And I always seen bikes at your house. I never realized you had a shop there.
Right.
Okay, so I would see different bikes. Now I see one out there for sale. So I thought, well, okay, I'll check it out.
Yeah, and I'm glad you stopped that day because we ended up hanging out for a few minutes, and I think I offered you beer, and you told me a little bit about yourself, and you work with the VJMC, right? You're field rep and advertising manager?
I am the Western New York. I consider Western New York, not all of New York State because of New York City, but yeah, field rep, and I do sell the ads for our magazine. So.
Okay, yeah. And you live right here in Darien, New York, same town that I live in. Yeah. So it was a match made in heaven from day one, and I tell my wife all the time I'd rather hang out with you than most other guys around. But anyway, so tell me a little bit about your history with motorcycling, starting out from like your first interest in it. If anybody got you into it, or what your first bike was, or.
Well, I'm rebuilding this bike for my friend who's a disabled Army veteran.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, he's been my best friend since we were 9 years old. Okay, he had a CB 160, and he and I would go riding around on that thing. So that was the first bike I ever had a ride on.
Okay.
He actually had tried to teach me how to ride it, but he was a terrible instructor as far as I was concerned, because I couldn't figure out what he was trying to tell me. And he says, "You're too uncoordinated, so you could never ride."
Well, hopefully he doesn't listen to this then.
Yeah, well, he knows. We've teased each other about that for a long time. But that's really what got me started.
Okay.
My sister had a boyfriend that had a 3-wheel Sportster trike. Okay, and he was dating my sister.
And this is what year roughly are we talking here?
Oh, probably 1969. Or 70.
So the Harley trike back then. Okay.
He made it himself. He went to Walter Cole's. I don't know if you remember the old Walter Cole's.
I don't know.
He was a guy that owned a scrapyard, motorcycle scrapyard, and you can get anything from that guy. And he bought a trike rear end from him and did a chop on his frame and welded it all together, made it himself. And, had 3. But he used to come and pick up my sister, and he was nice. He would let me wash it for him.
Oh, wow!
So I mean, those things piqued my interest in motorcycles, and that's, like I say, started way back then.
Okay. And so you were interested at that point, and then at what point did you get your first bike?
Well, the big problem was my dad. He didn't want me to have one.
Okay.
And I wanted one so bad I could taste it.
Sure.
And we would have a conversation all the time because I badgered him about it. And one of the things he would say would be, "Well, where are you going to get the money?" If I say yes, where are you going to get the money? And in the meantime, I had a paper route, so I'm doing papers. I used to shovel driveways, rake leaves, cut grass, and I'm saving my money. And I had a friend that had an S90, a 66 Honda S90 that he was trying to get rid of.
Okay.
So one day I badgering my father again, and I says, "Oh, if I get the money, can I buy one?" He thinks I'm not going to have any money. He goes, "Yeah, if you get the money, you can get one."
So he assumed that by taking you up on that condition that
I was never
going to happen because you didn't have the money.
Yeah, well, the next day when he comes home from work, there's a motorcycle in the yard, and he goes, "Who's here?" And I go, "Nobody's here." "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, whose motorcycle is that?" And I go, "Well, it's mine." He goes, "What do you mean it's your motorcycle?" I said, "You said if I had the money, I could buy one."
Yeah.
And his face turned beet red.
I'm sure.
He was pretty edgy. Well, you're not going to ride it. Of course he's at work. So I'm riding around the house, and pretty soon I got a path worn around the house. Take it down to the end of the street and ride down. And then that was it. That was
cool.
Now I had my wheels and I could go. At the end of our street was an old orphanage that was abandoned. I lived on Aurora Avenue in West Seneca, near
Okay.
Harlem and Mineral Springs.
Yeah.
And when you went down to that orphan home, there was acres of roads in there that you could ride around on.
Okay.
It also butted up against a creek. And if you rode along that creek, you could go all the way to Gardenville, New York, and get into an area we called Minnieville. Minnieville was an old railroad yard and switching station because back in the days, um, we were the largest railroad switching station in the country because of the Erie Canal and the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
when they took all those railroad tracks out of there, there were just cinder roads that went all over western New York.
Okay.
So you could get on it, go down to the orphanage, get on that creek, ride to Gardenville, get into this Minnieville area, then you could go anywhere you want.
Okay.
And I spent hours and hours and hours riding down there with my friends. I mean,
cool.
my parents never knew where I was. I come home from school, change my clothes, get on my bike. They both worked, so they were gone, and I would come home before dark and next day do it all over again.
Not bad. So. That's a nice way to grow up. How old were you during this time?
I was probably 16.
Okay.
16.
Cool. Yeah, growing up, I had a few friends that got into riding street bikes right when they got their car license. I was not one of them. I didn't start riding until I think I was 20. But so cool. So you were riding from the time you could legally drive a car.
Yeah, and I didn't have a license for a car or a motorcycle.
Right.
And I had plates on it, but I didn't have a license. And the only buddy that I had that had a motorcycle license that I could follow legally with a permit was my best friend that lived across the street.
Yeah, okay.
But I mean, I drove it everywhere. And back then it wasn't as big of a deal.
Sure.
They were more forgiving if they pulled you over and they said, well, push it down there. Don't be riding it on the street.
Yeah,
okay. They let you off with a warning.
Cool.
Yeah.
So from that point, you were hooked on bikes.
Yeah.
And all these decades later, you still are.
Yeah.
And so you were 16 then. So tell me a little bit about just the development of motorcycles into becoming a hobby and a passion of yours from that point. Yeah. Maybe let me know about some other bikes that you had along the way and some stories like that.
Well, it wasn't long after riding that S90, which really wasn't a dirt bike. We rode it in the dirt. We rode it everywhere. I wanted something bigger. Okay, obviously. So the second bike I bought was a Honda SL350, 1971. And my mom co-signed for me for it, which was really surprising. My dad wouldn't, but my mom did.
Yeah.
And again, I didn't have my license at the time. She followed me to the dealer. I bought the bike, drove it home, and she followed me.
Okay.
I didn't even have a license. She didn't know that I had a permit, and she didn't know she had to be a licensed motorcycle operator to follow me. But I probably neglected to tell her that part.
That's okay. Yeah.
But then I rode that for a couple years before I didn't actually get my license until I was 18.
Okay.
And that was just because of the way things worked at the time. I mostly rode with my buddy, or I rode, even when I was going to school, I took driver ed. I didn't have a car license. I couldn't afford a car was the problem.
Okay.
Couldn't afford a car, couldn't afford the insurance for a car.
Sure, right.
So I rode my bike winter and summer in Buffalo, New York.
No kidding.
And my mom sometimes would beg me to take the car. It's snowing out, take the car. And I go, I got knobbies, Mom, I'm okay, whatever. And I only started buying winter cars when girlfriends' fathers didn't like it that I showed up in the wintertime on a motorcycle to take them out on a date.
So in a Buffalo, New York winter, when you were younger, you would pick up your girlfriend on a motorcycle.
I would try to pick them up, and a lot of times they would have to meet me someplace else in order to be able to go, because if their father saw, it was hard enough in the summertime then, let alone the wintertime. So
that's a good one. Yeah.
So, and I did that for a couple of years, and then I started buying winter cars. And what got me into working on the bikes was the salt played hell with the motorcycles in the wintertime. Yeah. So in the spring, I would completely disassemble the bike, replace bushings and bearings and, do a tune up and all that kind of stuff. And I never really cared what it looked like, but I always made it run good.
Sure.
I would do rattle can paint jobs on it and everything like that. And I had multiple different paint jobs I tried. I took BOCES for a while, and I could do paint jobs and things. And, I rode that bike for, I don't know how many years, 10 years or more.
Okay.
And then when Honda stopped supporting parts for that bike, I got a little bit worried, and this was way before eBay or any of that kind of stuff. Right. So I started buying basket cases. Okay, I would find a basket case, and I ended up with 7 of those SL350s
of the same model.
Of the same
so you
model.
were just buying up parts bikes basically, so
right.
You could keep your primary
to keep
one
my
going.
bike going. And so I did that for years.
Yeah.
And along the way, people would know that I like to buy basket cases and stuff like that, and offer things to me. And I would not even be interested in the bike, but the price that they were asking was like so unreasonable that I had to say yes.
Yep.
So I accumulate
those down too.
Yeah, so you know how that goes. Somebody have something in the garage, they're trying to get rid of it. $200, and you say, "Oh,
sure."
Don't say that. Because now I'm going to buy it.
Let's back up 1 second, because you mentioned that every spring you would tear this thing apart and rebuild it, basically just to cleanse it of all the salt and grime from the winter. Okay. Yeah. And then I like what you said about how it was right, even though it didn't look great. Yeah. Because I always can appreciate a bike that doesn't look that great, but it's mechanically tight, runs perfect, brakes, tires, everything is in good shape, and the bike is serviceable. And I mean, the cosmetics to me is always an afterthought. Yeah. And a lot of people nowadays, especially the young guys that first are getting into it, they're taking these bikes and they're just making them look how they want. And they don't stop, they don't handle, they don't run right, they don't do anything right. They got 10 electrical shorts each. And I hate to see that trend. And I'd rather if everybody had the same mentality that you had back then of just making sure that it's mechanically tight, everything's squared away.
It was my only transportation. So
good.
It had to be right. And I was really lucky because I had a guy at Imperial Cycle Sales, and when they were on Broadway, the guy in there, I think his name was Glenn, was one of the parts counter guys. And for whatever reason, he either liked those SLs or he liked me. But when I would come in there every spring with my list full of parts, he'd tell the other guys, I got that guy.
Okay.
And so he would take care of me, and do a good job. And even when they closed, I had been going there for years. I know they were closing. So I go in there for the last time to buy whatever I need, on my bike. And he goes, I got something to show you. He goes, so come with me. So he takes me in the back room, and he had a brand new set of OEM mufflers, which were unobtainable at that time.
You told me that.
And he goes, I saved these for you. He goes, if you want them. And I think I paid $300 for them at the time, which was a really good deal.
Sure, I bet.
Now they cost over $1,000 if you can
for
get
the
them,
OEM ones.
Well, you can't get OEM anymore.
You can't.
For a repop, it costs $1,000.
Get out. So even just a aftermarket OEM equivalent setup is $1,000.
$1,000. That's
for a pair of them, or each, or
for a pair.
For a pair. Wow.
They were called spark arrestor mufflers. They were steel. They were painted black. And they had little condensate removal plates at the bottom of them, but nobody ever took them off and let them off. So they would rot out from the bottom. And that was a problem. And I probably changed maybe 3 or 4 sets over the lifetime of that bike.
No kidding.
Because of that.
So how many years did you run that bike, that SL?
Well, I rode it every year up. I mean, even until now. I mean, I've been riding that bike for over 50 years.
You still have that exact bike today?
Yeah, that's that one sitting right there in the living room.
Oh man, I know you have a million bikes, but I didn't realize we were talking about one that you still had. So
that was I bought that, and any bike I've had after that was secondary to that. Yeah. So and about 10 years ago, I mean, when you're a kid, and I'm sure you know this, I mean, we beat the living hell out of those things.
Sure,
and I beat that bike so bad at one point, power shifting and things like that it wouldn't shift regular anymore.
Yeah.
So I took it to the dealer. I had them do the bottom end. I wasn't good with that.
Okay.
Or experienced with that, but I could do the upper end myself. Yeah. So I had gone over the upper end a couple different times, rings and pistons and stuff like that when I beat it to death. And then, like I say, about 10 years ago, I think it was 2014, I decided I owed that bike. So I wanted to restore it back to original.
Yeah.
And I went nuts going on eBay and, swap meets and things. And somebody told me, well, you need to go to Mid-Ohio if you're looking for parts, because they got 800 vendors there, whatever. So that was my first, a big swap meet that I attended looking for parts. And through that, I found the Vintage Japanese Motorcycle Club. They were there. They had a presence. So that's how I met them.
So it was your first encounter with them.
So, and because I joined the club, their magazine has advertisers that all catered to people that ride, restore, and or work on vintage Japanese motorcycles.
Yeah.
So I bought every new old stock part I could find.
Really?
So it's all totally original. It's all it's all correct.
Beautiful, yeah.
Probably the only thing that's not correct is I bought stainless steel spokes and I bought stainless steel hardware.
I would have done the same thing.
Since I don't care. I didn't build it to show it.
Yeah.
I build it. I still ride it. I just don't want them to rust anymore.
I know. It's impossible to keep what are they? Just regular, they're just plated or something.
Yeah, they were just steel spokes that were, they were anodized and they rust.
Yeah.
And so
they would put these beautiful chrome hoops on these wheels and these beautiful polished hubs, and then the spokes there's nothing you could do to keep them from going bad.
Right.
Especially if you're driving it all winter.
Yeah. Well, and I don't do that anymore. I can't, I did that for a couple of years, and then, like I said, it was difficult with the women and stuff.
Sure.
So
and then you got into the cars. Finally.
Had to quit that. My first car I paid $25 for.
No kidding. Wow.
Car was a 60 Chevy. 1960 Chevy. It had a heater and a radio, an AM radio, and that was enough for me. That's all I needed.
Hey, not bad.
$25.
That's pretty cool then. Okay. So how many bikes do you currently have in the stable? Ballpark. I know.
Right now we have 27 bikes.
27 bikes. And how many of those are registered and you're riding?
We keep 6 on the road.
Okay. And when you say your wife is also an enthusiast.
My wife rides, yes. When I met my wife, and this was over 50 years ago, first thing we bought was a motorcycle for her. Okay. And we've been riding together. She had boyfriends before that would take her for rides, but nobody would ever teach her how to ride.
Okay. And,
she was with me and I rode, and if she wanted to ride, I was going to teach her. So we bought her a 125 SL Honda.
Okay.
So I had my 350 SL, and we both loved dirt riding. We would go. It was some of the most fun riding I ever had. You're running around with your future wife, and you're on your bikes, and you see an old dirt road, and you take off, and there's nobody around. And
so you guys, your idea of a date was just taking these bikes out for the night.
Yeah, go for a ride, and wherever we felt like going, and if we saw a cool road that was unpaved or whatever, we just go exploring and.
No, that's great. I've always, your wife is a very cool lady. I definitely, think it's pretty rare to find someone that's as into a hobby as you are, and I'm sure that you appreciate
and a wife that is right along there with you.
Yeah.
That's the thing. There's a lot of times you hear of guys saying, "Oh, I wanted to buy this bike, but my wife won't let me. I can't or this or that." I have the opposite problem. My wife finds bike that she wants to have, and she's not even big enough to ride them, but she still wants them because they look cool.
Yeah.
The BSA that's sitting over there, you want to know about some of the other bikes I've owned.
Yeah.
That was a funny story in that at the time I was working for a company and the owners had died, and I was contemplating buying the business. So I'm in a save money mode. I'm thinking I'm going to have to remortgage my house and things like this and be able to afford this. And my friend Rich, who I'm building that one CB160 for, had a barn. I used to store all my bikes at his barn because I didn't have enough room in my garage.
Right, okay.
So I was taking my bikes over there, and when I walk in, he had 5 BSAs and a Triumph in there. And I'm thinking, like, where'd they come from? And he goes, well, another friend of his was getting divorced and had to sell them.
Yeah.
So Sue has always liked British bikes for whatever reason. She just thinks they look and sound cool.
They do.
So and I came home and I tell her, "Oh, you used to see the bikes at Rich's barn." And I explained to her. I said, "Well, we got to go and look at them." Well, we go there and she wants to buy all of them. Oh, and I'm going, "Honey, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to buy this business or not. I can't. We got to be careful. We can't be spending money right now." Well, to make a long story short, I didn't end up buying the business, and it was the best thing I never did.
Okay, good.
Because I would probably have been dead by now if that were the case. It was so stressful.
From the stress,
But my buddy calls me a couple of days later, and he goes, "Something weird just happened." And I go, "What? What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, Sue called and said if you don't buy that bike, she's buying it."
Oh, really?
And he goes, "And that's not normal."
That is definitely not normal.
Yeah,
it's a nice thing, but it's not normal.
Yeah, so that's her in a nutshell. And I'll buy bikes to flip, now. And then she goes, "Oh, you're not going to sell that one, are you?"
Right.
It's like, I can't keep them all.
Sure,
we have 3 in the living room because we ran out of space in the garage and the addition, and I got one in the trailer.
Well, they do. They look nice in here, though.
They do look nice in here, and we like to look at them
by the fire and everything.
We consider them art.
Yeah,
I mean,
and they are. These three bikes definitely are. Yeah.
You know, they're just good to look at. As you can see, she decorates them for all the holidays. She puts Christmas decorations on them, Easter decorations. Right now, she's got St. Patrick's Day stuff on them.
Hey.
You know, and she likes looking at them all year, and so do I.
Good.
You know, we enjoy motorcycles all the way around.
And right now, between the two of you, you got 6 of them that are registered and on the road and everything. Yeah. And what's the 6?
Well, my SL350,
which is
always
your
on the road.
Childhood bike that you've had your whole life. Okay.
And that bike, and I'll get to that in a second. But that bike, when we first started riding, her and I would ride on that bike. Then when my kids were born, they had their first ride on that bike. Okay. Then when my grandkids were born, they had their first ride on that bike. So it's got a lot of history.
Sure.
You know, that bike. So it's my baby. I'll never sell it. It'll go to one of my kids or grandkids or somebody.
Good.
But my wife rides a 650 Suzuki.
The Savage,
S40
right?
Boulevard. It's a Boulevard. That's Savage was
okay. So so it's a Boulevard. Suzuki
then she's got a 750 Honda Shadow.
Okay.
And the 650 is narrow and light, and that's the easiest bike for her to ride.
For sure.
The Shadow is about 100 pounds heavier and it's wider. It has a lower seat height, but she only has so much leg. Right, to go around a bike. So that if she's tired or not feeling particularly strong that day, she'll ride the Suzuki.
Right. Okay.
You know. Then the BSA is considered hers. We say it's her bike because she's the one that wanted it.
And that one's on the road too?
That one's on the road, and she can't ride it because she's not tall enough. So she can't even reach the ground. Her feet don't touch at all on that bike. Okay. Then we were in a lot of times for work paid to travel, paid to send me to conferences around the country. Right. And Sue always went with me. That was the deal I made with them. If you're going to send me these things, my wife is coming with me.
Sure,
you know, whatever. And when we do that, they would pay for a rental car. Sometimes I would get a bike instead. You know, go to San Diego and rent a motorcycle and ride around on a motorcycle. And we rented an Indian. Okay. So we rented a 2015 Indian Chief Vintage and rode around in that. And she always liked being on a naked bike. Okay, she don't like my Goldwing because it's too big for her. She likes to sit up close to me, and she's a great rider.
A passenger?
As a passenger, she's a great rider. Yeah. You don't know she's on the back of there. Sure. I mean, she don't hold on. She knows how to use her legs and her feet to stay on the foot pegs. I mean, that's, keep the weight on the pegs. So we rented that bike, and she fell in love with that thing. So when I came home, I found one of them and bought one. So if she's too tired to ride her own bike, we take the Indian and she rides with me.
So that's your 2-up bike specifically. She won't go on the Goldwing, or she
doesn't like to go on the Goldwing. Yeah. If it was an emergency, she would, but not. Yeah. You know, so then my Goldwing is on the road.
Right. Yep.
And how many did I say?
And
then she bought the Janus.
And that's on the road too?
And so that's on the road. So that's Suzuki.
The Honda Shadow.
The BSA. My SL350. The Janus.
And the
Goldwing and the Indian.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're going, nowadays, if you're heading out, what bike are you usually?
My favorite bike is the Goldwing.
It is. And I've seen you on it all the time, obviously, because we live right in town together, and you step over sometimes.
People say it's too big. Oh, it's too big. If they have never ridden one.
No, and you are absolutely right about that, because people don't understand how refined the Goldwing is.
And how balanced it is because of that opposed 6-cylinder motor that's flat, low down. The center of gravity is really low. Yeah. And it's nimble, way more nimble than people realize it is.
The first time I was on a 1800 Goldwing, it was probably 2005 or 2006. And when I got on the thing, I was nervous as hell. It was the biggest bike I ever threw my leg over. And as soon as I started letting that clutch out, I could just pick my feet up. And no matter how slow I was going, that bike just felt like it was just going to sit right there for me. Yeah. And I couldn't believe how well balanced it is, how you don't feel all the weight of the bike. I mean, what does that bike weigh? About 11 or 1,200 pounds?
No, it's 8 or 9? Like 890 pounds or so.
So that's a heavy bike, and it really just doesn't feel like it.
Yeah. All the weight goes away when you start moving.
And I mean, and it's no slouch in a straight line either. If you want to get on it, I mean,
they go.
she gets up and goes.
Yeah, you don't have to downshift to pass cars.
No,
Yeah,
yeah, it's 1800 cc, right?
yeah.
And yeah, the GL 1800 I think is probably, I haven't really had much experience with the newer models.
I haven't ridden one of the newer ones
You
yet either.
haven't?
They're even
Okay.
supposedly better because they're
Weren't
lighter.
didn't they go to a CVT or something on them, or an automatic transmission?
Well, they have an automatic. They call it a dual clutch transmission, but it's an automatic. And,
Okay.
you know, and the bike is lighter.
It is, okay.
And quicker, tuned different. You know,
It is,
so
okay.
it's a much faster.
Is
lighter.
it a new motor, or is it the same 1800?
It's a revised motor. It's still an 1800,
okay.
but it's just they've done a lot of work to
it a little.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, the 1800 I think, at least for my generation, is the peak of touring bikes. I mean,
yeah.
And exactly what you said is true. Is if you haven't been on one, I don't even want to hear your opinion on it.
Yeah.
Because you have no idea what you're missing out on, and
yeah.
you know, I don't think a Goldwing is in my future, but I definitely, you know, as an enthusiast, can really appreciate the refinement.
Well,
of that bike,
it's funny
you know?
that you say that because I had a 76 Honda CB750. I bought it as a basket case.
Yeah.
I put it together, you know, and it ran so good I kept it, you know,
Okay.
and it was too good to sell. It was the first big street bike that I had that Sue and I could both get on and take longer rides.
Yeah.
Okay, so I rode that thing for about 10 years.
Okay.
And then I started having some electrical issues with it, and I'm not that great with the electrical shit. So I kind of was looking for something different, and I told my one cousin, and he was a Goldwing rider.
Yeah.
And he calls up one day while I'm working to talk to Sue, and he says, "Hey, I found a bike for John, and you know he needs to come right away and look at it." She goes, "Okay, well when he comes home from work, I'll tell him." And he goes, "Give me his number. I want to call him right now." So he wanted me to come right from work to go look at this bike.
Okay.
And it was at Holinek in Spencerport.
Yeah. Okay.
He had taken his bike in there to get worked on, and here was an '87 Goldwing 1200 that they had taken in as a project bike because the alternator had went. You got to pull the motor to get to it.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was in really nice shape, and they weren't asking a lot of money for it. So he calls me and basically says, you really need to buy this bike. And I'm thinking, I was thinking of Sportster, honestly. I was thinking of something a little bit different. All my buddies had Harleys and Sportsters and things.
Sure,
and I think, that's, seemed like a logical step for me.
Most of my friends are on Harley too.
Yeah. So, and I get there, and it's a Goldwing, and I'm thinking, shit, that's an old man's motorcycle. I don't want an old man's motorcycle. And he goes, I'm telling you, you buy this bike, and you ride it for a year. If you don't like it, you can sell it for more than what they're asking for it.
For sure.
He goes, and
probably,
you might like it, when you get on it. By the time I got it home, I loved it. I couldn't believe, I never would have thought I'd buy one. But
so this was a 1200.
This was a 1200.
And was that the Aspen Kate or the Aspen?
It was an Aspen Kate.
It was, okay. Yeah. Cool.
And then I bought, a couple years later, I bought a '97, which was a 1500.
The 1500, yeah.
And then
that's a nice bike too.
That was the one my wife liked. For whatever reason, that bike fit her better. It didn't have as much of a surround, her, and she likes the naked bikes, and the seat was straighter up, where the other ones are inclined. So she likes to sit like this. She don't like sissy bars. She doesn't like racks or whatever.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't comfortable to her, the other two. So she liked the 1500, and she rode with me. We did a couple long road trips on that bike.
Yeah.
And, no problem. But she hates the new one.
No kidding. Yeah, I guess to me the 1500 and 1800 seemed similar enough that I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah. Well, and I tell you, and that was another thing that my cousin did to me. I had bought this bike. I won it on eBay from Chicago.
Okay.
Okay, so
the 1500.
The 1500.
Okay.
The guy had 3 of them, and he said, "You could come, pay me when you get here. You could pick any one of the 3 for the money that I."
Yeah.
It was $10,000.
Okay.
So I go to Chicago and I picked the one that I thought was best, and I drove it home. But anyways, when I got it home, I changed all the fluids, and I did anything that I thought might need, new tires, all the kind of stuff, make sure it was all perfect. And I only rode it for like maybe 6 months. And then my cousin calls me again. He said, "Hey, I got another bike for you." And I'm going,
was he making commission off you at this point?
No, he wasn't, but he was a pain in the ass. So one of his friends had the 1800. He'd gone to Americade, and when he came home, we don't know what happened for sure because I'm never riding that bike again.
Yeah.
So it's got only like 1,500 miles on it, and the one that I had that I spent all this money on and fixed all up now had about 12,000 into it.
Okay.
right? Okay. And it had 37,000 miles on it. So it was 10 years older, had more mileage, whatever. So when I get there and I'm looking at the thing, and the guy was only asking $10,000 for it.
Sure.
And I'm thinking, shit, now I got to buy this bike. So I buy it and sold mine for almost the same money that I bought that one for.
The Aspen Kid. Okay.
And when you ride the two, it was different, totally different, the way it rode and felt. I mean, it was just, the suspension, everything was better and like night and day. So now why would I want to go back on that other one?
Right.
So.
Yeah. So for me, I think if it's earlier than like the GL 1500, I would definitely be out. I've ridden some GL 1500s and had some in my shop that are pretty well maintained, that just needed basic maintenance, that pretty much, they were all how they're supposed to be, at least, And 1500, I think, is a cool bike. I could ride that. When you start getting into like the 11 and 1200s, I'm kind of like, but then the early GL 1000s without the fairings,
I really liked the naked ones.
I would like to have someday, but yeah.
I thought I wanted one for a long time, a naked one, and I'd looked at a bunch of them and never found the right one.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons I wanted to go to the 1800 is I used to have a camper that I could pull with the Goldwing.
Oh, okay.
It was a folded up. It was about 4 feet long, about 3.5 feet wide.
Yeah.
But when you opened it up, it was 4 feet wide, 7 feet long, or 14 feet long and 7 feet tall.
Okay.
It had a queen size bed in it. It had a changing room in it. It had a spot for your cooler on the tongue. And we would go camping with that.
Yeah. And so you got a hitch on your 1800.
I had a hitch on the 1800. And the rule of thumb was the trailer should be half the weight of the motorcycle. No more than half the weight of the motorcycle.
That makes sense.
And, the 1500 was a little too small weight-wise for the trailer. So I had to go to an 1800 anyways. Yeah. I didn't anticipate doing it as quickly.
Did it take you time to get used to towing a trailer with a bike?
It was weird.
I've never done it.
It tends to push you.
I believe that.
Okay, so that was what was the most unnerving thing. I never really did get used to that. I never felt extremely comfortable. Right. I know guys go cross country with them.
Yeah. You have to adjust how you ride, I'm sure.
Yeah, you have to adjust how you ride. You have to be very careful.
So you really are taking like a lot less corner speed, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Pushing in the corners.
Yes.
Probably need more time to slow down on the brakes and stuff like that. Probably do need.
Yeah, you really only have a contact patch.
You do have to downshift to pass the car, right? If you got.
Yeah. It had plenty of power. I don't know. I mean, I think you could have still done it.
Even with the trailer, you could just whomp on it, whatever gear you're in. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, cool. I've never towed a trailer on a bike. I don't know if I ever will. But I imagine that it's definitely some kind of curve that you got to really just spend some time to figure it out so you can do it safely.
I probably never will either. And now I do it the other way around. I bought the toy hauler so I can put two motorcycles on the trailer and take the trailer with my truck. And that's so much easier.
Yeah, well, that's the life, man. That's the life. Oh, man. Really cool. So that's your current bikes. And then let's talk a little bit about the VJMC. Now, that stands for Vintage Japanese Motorcycle Club.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that you had joined the club on, I think, your first trip to Mid-Ohio or something like that. So let's talk a little bit about that from the time that you got involved with the club and then just kind of how you got to where you are now, being so involved as you are now.
Well, I originally got involved because of the resources that were available through the club to help me restore my 350.
Right, yeah.
And, once you join the club and you start meeting people that are in the club and, going to the events, you meet some really good people.
I know.
You know what I mean? So, I think the majority of our friends are motorcycle people.
Sure.
I mean, I do have friends that are work-related friends that weren't, but I think we spend the majority of our time with people that are like-minded.
Yeah, okay? and I think that's normal, and that's okay. I think it's normal to want to be able to spend time with people who have similar interests. You know, I mean.
So the club was good in that way, and when I retired, all the events that they have are in Florida and California and the Midwest and things like that. They had nothing going on in New York.
Right.
So I asked him, I said, could I be a field rep up here, try to get something going? I've accumulated enough friends, I think, that I could, try to get some things put together.
What year was this roughly, or how long had you been in the club before you approached them about that?
Well, it was 2000. Well, I retired 7 years ago.
Okay.
Okay, so it was when I retired. So
Okay.
7 years ago, I retired.
And that's when you started working with the club on these other
That's when I
projects.
became a field rep for the
Yeah.
club.
Okay.
And one of the things that made it easy for me to become a field rep was the gentleman Bob Harris that I talk about.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, everybody in around here knows Bob Harris. He's quite the character.
Yeah.
Very good guy, but he does a lot of motorcycle events.
Sure.
So for me, I don't have to organize an event. I show up with a table. I sit there. Sue and I do it as a couple.
Yeah.
And I set up our table and I try to talk to people about our club and try to get people to join.
Right. Yeah.
And I was doing that for a little while. And for my job, I was a traveling salesman, a technical sales and service rep.
Yeah.
But they called me up one day.
Right?
Yeah, in the steam business. And they say, you used to be a salesman. I go, yeah. Like, what does that mean? Right. You go, well, we need a guy to have, to handle our advertising, in the magazine, and I'm going, it wasn't that kind of sales, it was different. He goes, well, can you try it for a little while? And if you don't like it, we'll find somebody else. We really need somebody. The guy that was doing it, retired.
Right.
So I said, okay, I'll try it and whatever. And I like it.
Yeah.
For one thing, you're talking to advertisers that are motorcycle related.
Sure.
Okay. So, and when I do my spotlights and things like I mentioned earlier before we started the interview, was you got to call them, you call them up and you interview them to do an additional spotlight of them in the magazine to help promote them in addition to their ad.
So people can kind of see the personality behind the company that's
exactly who they're dealing with and, what
kind of personalize the person.
Right. It personalizes them, puts a name, a face to the name and things like that. Good. And, I do these interviews and I only expect to spend a half an hour on each interview, and I can talk to a guy for 2 hours on the phone. We're like, oh, what do you got? What are you riding? What do you do?
Yeah,
what I mean? So I mean, it's not as time consuming as I expected it to be as far as how much work it involved,
and it's enjoyable.
Yeah, so as things progressed, I do that. I do the events that I can do. I go to swap meets and things, and like your annual. Your monthly meetings at your house. Do those kind of things, have a presence. I've met people there that your neighbor, for example, had parts that I needed for that 160 I'm redoing.
Right, yeah, right.
So that was okay. Yeah. That's why you go to these things. The people that you will meet and the people. Networking and whatever. That's why it all works.
Good. So let's back up a second because you said you're selling advertising. But a lot of the listeners might not know that VJMC has their own magazine.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that because I'm a VJMC member. You signed me up this past summer. I've been getting the magazines. You were even nice enough to write an article about me in the magazine, which was a really cool thing. So let's talk a little bit about the magazine, how often it comes out, what kind of content you'd expect to find in there. Because it's a full color, beautiful magazine with heavy paper. It is a high quality something magazine you would expect to get for free for just being a member. Normally you're expecting like these newspaper qualities, where it's like a penny saver or something, but it's a nice heavy magazine.
The membership pays for the magazine. We could not have the magazine without the membership. Gotcha, we're a not-for-profit club.
Sure.
Okay, so the dues really are reflected by the cost of producing and mailing the magazine.
Yeah, okay.
And the magazine is a little bit different than other clubs in the fact that it's all written by members.
Right.
Okay, so if you have a cool story about a cool bike and you have some pictures, you can send it in and they publish it.
Yeah.
A lot of people like seeing their stuff published in a magazine.
Sure, yeah.
Whatever. And it's a bi-monthly magazine, so it's 6 issues a year.
So every 2 months you're getting.
So every 2 months you get a magazine. And, it goes out all across the country. We have 3,500 members in the club in the U.S. And we also have some members in Canada, Europe, and Australia. It is considered.
Do they have their own magazines in different
continents? It's only one magazine.
So the same magazine is going everywhere around the world.
Yeah.
Get out. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So, and, the thing I like about it is, a couple of things. First of all, it's membership written. Second of all, it has want ads in there. And, if you're trying to collect stuff for old bikes and things like this, and you look on eBay, you're limited to what people will put there, and people don't always know what they're talking about. They'll say this is for this model, and then you get it, and it's not right. And you say, oh, damn, now I have this part, and what am I going to do with it? So the want ads for members are free. So you can post in the want ads anything you're trying to sell or something that you're looking for.
Something you're looking for. So I'm looking for this specific part for this specific
I need a tank for a 1971
bike.
Honda.
One of your members might be reading it and say, man, I got that in my garage. I didn't think anyone would ever want it. And now they make the connection and make it happen.
Exactly. So that's a cool thing. And then we don't like a lot of advertisers. We only want, you won't find restaurant advertisers in there, whatever.
Because it's not a regional magazine. It's
right. We want only motorcycles, vintage motorcycle specific product and or services is what we want.
Makes sense,
and there's not a lot of that around.
And those are mostly the people that are going to want to advertise with a magazine like that, because it's right in their niche where they're trying to make their money.
And it is a little bit funny at times because you talk to an advertiser, potential advertiser, and they look at what your clientele is, and they say, oh, well, you guys are just into vintage Japanese motorcycles. And I go, well, it might sound like that because of the name, but I don't know any of our members that only have one motorcycle and it's only a vintage.
Right.
Every one of them has at least, if you're going to ride vintage, you have to have a modern bike. Okay. I mean, because, they're not always going to run when you want them to.
Yeah, so I do understand that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and most of us have multiple motorcycles. We have trailers, we have cars, usually multiple cars. So the pool is much bigger than what you think if you're just saying, oh, you're just a vintage Japanese guy.
Sure, yeah.
We like everything.
And I think a lot of enthusiasts are the same way.
Yeah.
People kind of have this tendency to believe that, there's Harley guys and sport bike guys and adventure rider guys and vintage guys. And maybe there are to a certain point, but I think, the people out there who really just appreciate motorcycles are, they're out there.
It's fun to ride different bikes for different reasons.
It is.
Like I have a couple small bikes that I like to bop around, and I've always heard this said, and I totally agree with it 100%, that it's more fun to ride a small bike fast than a big bike slow.
It is.
And I can relate that with my Goldwing. My Goldwing, if you're going 80 miles an hour, it feels like you're going 50.
Sure.
And I constantly catch myself going too fast if there's no other cars around me.
Yeah.
Because, and it's just, flat out smooth. Well, I take my little 350, and if I go out there, if I'm doing 80, you're whizzing. I mean,
and
it feels like it really, Well, it'll go 80 miles an hour downhill with the wind behind your back. I mean, but from 0 to 80, it's quick. It's geared low for dirt, whatever. So you got a lot of torque, and it's fun to beat it, and it doesn't like to be ridden normal. It wants to be beaten. I got to beat it when I take it out.
You got to keep the R's up. And
like when I was a kid, obviously, because I wanted it to last. But, take it out, work it hard, and it's fun. So.
Yeah, I mean, my bike, I have a KZ1000, and I have a client with a real clean KZ440 twin, and every time it's in and I pull out of my driveway to test drive it, there's just a huge smile on my face because of just how peppy and quick and nimble it is. I mean, you feel like you could flick the bike around any corner. You could, you know what I mean? It just, it's funny to get on something lighter and snappier with the shorter gearing and everything.
Yeah.
And, you might be going 10 by the time you're shifting to second, but you're just, zipping through the gears. The engine revs up fast. And, definitely is a lot.
It's a totally different experience. And it's just fun to enjoy all of it.
And, here, this is funny too, actually, and it's not related to vintage bikes, but over the past, I don't know, I mean, Kawasaki's always had the Ninja 250 since the 80s, right? And then recently Honda and Kawasaki started kind of going back and forth. Then we're doing 300s and stuff. And there's this new trend now where they're doing 400cc 4-cylinder sport bikes. And these things are faster and quicker than like the 600s and 750s from back when I started riding.
Yeah.
And they've got fuel injection and they've got all this technology on them.
Yeah.
And it's like an actual super bike just with a 400cc engine. And it's, it's just wild to see where everything goes and to see that, with modern technology and all the stuff that they've come out with, I mean, how many guys would you say, oh, I got a 400cc, and they say, oh, 400, what are you going to do on that? But, like you said, they're a lot of fun. They don't weigh a lot. They're easy to ride. They're easy to they're more forgiving if you make a small error here and there. And, but yeah, I've always liked the small stuff and the middle range bikes, and yeah, I definitely can relate to what you're saying there.
And as far as the magazine is concerned, or the club, we have a website. You
Okay,
can buy a
what is the
digital.
website? Is it
The website
VJMC
is www.vgmc.org.
.org? Okay,
Okay, and you
cool.
can go on there. And if you're a member, all back issues are available on the website.
Really?
You can buy a digital only membership because a lot of younger people would rather do things on their phone
Sure.
than
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
paper magazine. All the advertisers are in there, same as a regular. It's the same as a regular
Yeah.
magazine. It looks the
So
same.
is a digital membership cheaper because you don't have to?
$30 compared to 45.
Okay,
So
so if you
digital is
save $15 and you can
yes,
access everything
yes,
digitally, you're just not going to get the paper copy.
yes,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
I like getting stuff in the mail because nobody mails anything to people anymore. So I like checking the mailbox and finding a nice crispy VJMC magazine out
Well, you'll
there.
find most older people, would prefer a handheld
Yeah.
magazine
I
than a
think you're
paper.
going to see the trend go back towards analog products.
Yeah,
People are going to miss, the feel of, like for instance, I like to read as a hobby. I tried to read online on Kindle and stuff like that, and I want to feel the paper. I want to turn the pages. I want to hear
yeah,
I want to put my bookmark in there,
yeah,
and I think you're going to see a trend back towards analog stuff once people kind of,
yeah,
realize that digital is certainly convenient
yeah,
and easy to do, but it just kind of lacks some of the
yeah.
soul that we want out
No,
out
I
of
agree
stuff like that.
completely. Yeah,
So the website is www.vjmc.org. People can sign up right on the website, or do
yeah,
they
yeah.
have to
They can
find a
sign up
field
on.
rep?
Yep,
You
yep.
can sign
No,
up right on
yep.
there and pay with a credit card, and
Right.
then you're a member. And what
Another thing that's
other?
kind of cool about the club too is if you sign up 4 members within a period of a year, you get a free membership the following year.
So if you refer
So
4 people that end up signing up, you get a year for free.
yes,
Okay, that's
yeah.
pretty
So it
cool.
helps promote the club, and
Yeah,
keep it going.
yeah.
So
What other benefits do members get besides the magazine and access to the website? I know that you guys do some events and stuff like that. So
the biggest thing is the people that you meet. Really, I mean, to me,
yeah,
that's a big benefit. The networking with
sure.
people, like-minded people, and they do have a lot of organized events, like their national rally. This year, their national rally is south of Pittsburgh. I can't remember the name of the little town that it's in, but a
Okay.
national rally is like a 3-day event. You have to register. You pay for registration. You stay in a hotel,
Yeah.
and every day they have rides. This year, they're going to the Flight 93 Memorial. They're going
Okay.
to go to the Johnstown flood area in Pennsylvania that's
Okay.
south of Pittsburgh. I forget
Yeah.
what the other one, but every day there'll be rides.
Sure.
They have an actual bike show there. If you bring your bike in, and
Yeah.
they have awards and things
Okay.
for the bike show. And they have all their meals at the hotel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's included in the registration that you pay. You pay for as your
Right.
meals.
Cool.
And then
Okay.
if you're out on the road, they stop someplace for lunch or on. You pay for
Yeah.
that. But
And what regions do they mostly host events? You said they're getting
well,
better
they're
about
real.
having stuff in different
Well,
areas in the.
every area has a field rep.
Okay.
Okay, and it's up to the
Someone like
field
you
reps and
who.
someone like myself
Yeah.
that will do events.
Right.
Some are more active than others.
Sure.
They're very active in the Midwest. They're very active in Florida. They're
Okay.
very active in Southern California.
Yeah.
And then other areas are
So
not
there's
as
certain
active.
pockets where there's all sorts of stuff going on,
Yes,
and then other people probably will make the drive to go to these events if they
right,
really want to attend, pick something that's
right.
at least a realistic
Now
drive
we
to get
just
out
had
there.
that winter cycle therapy event. That's
Yeah,
not technically a VJMC event, but
but
Bob
you're,
Harris, who does it,
yeah,
I help him promote that. I send out 250 emails for every event that I'm going to be at with the VJMC booth.
yeah, okay,
Okay. And some of them are VJMC members. I think 117 are VJMC members. The other ones are motorcycle enthusiasts that I've
sure,
met that haven't joined the
yeah,
VJMC.
yeah.
But I go there, I set up the booth, and I send out all my emails and everybody know what's going on.
Good,
And that's how I have events here, or how I
right? Is you're
participate in
kind of
events here.
piggybacking with other guys that are
Yes,
kind
they're
of in the same kind
right.
of wheelhouse, and then I've seen you at like events with your booth and your tent, and
Yeah,
you got all the pins and patches and
yeah,
stuff like that for the club,
right.
and you can sign up right there.
Yeah.
And I always like when I'm on the bike and I go to like a swap meet and I see you there, because then I know that if I buy something, I can put it in your truck, and then I don't have to carry it on my bike
There
to
you
get
go.
back to Darien. So
Yeah.
So I always like seeing you out there, and obviously you're a lot of fun to talk to, and you're one of the people I could probably like we were saying earlier. You know, if you get with somebody who knows how to talk bikes and knows their stuff, you could talk 8 hours. You know, but we are approaching our 1 hour mark on this, and I want to ask you 10 fun questions, and then we'll kind of wrap up after that. So these 10 questions, if you've listened, I tailor-made 10 fun motorcycle questions for all my guests, and these are the ones for John, and we're going to see what he says to these ones, okay? So the first one is, if Honda never existed, what brand would have your loyalty?
It probably would have ended up being a Harley.
Okay.
Only because all my friends had Harleys.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, that is perfect setup for my second question, which is, if you had to drive a Harley, what model would it be?
My best friend, the one with the 160, has a hardtail deluxe.
Yeah, okay.
Which I really like. It's a really nice looking motorcycle.
Yeah.
I would like to ride that
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very similar to an Indian.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, and I like the Indian. So
right,
that's
yeah. Good. What is your favorite bike that you've ridden but never owned?
My buddy's Sportster.
The Sportster? Okay.
Yeah, he had a Sportster, an 883 way back when.
Sportster's a nice bike to ride. That's a pretty well balanced. They're actually not that light, but they do feel light when you're on them. You know, people think they're so small and light, but I've felt. Me and my brother-in-law put his in the back of a pickup truck one time, and it wasn't very light at all.
Yeah, and I've never owned a Harley, but I mean, I rode them, and okay.
Yeah. What is your least favorite bike that you have owned?
I don't think I have a least favorite.
So you've been pretty happy with every bike you
yeah, if it has wheels on it, I usually like it.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. All bikes have like their redeeming qualities.
Yes, exactly. Stuff, I don't think I ever rode one. I can't think of one that I didn't like.
Full face?
Well, you know what? I take that back. My son had an M109 Boulevard.
Yep.
Wicked fast.
Sure.
Extremely noisy.
Big
when he passed away, he willed me his bikes.
Yeah.
And I really felt bad that I couldn't keep it because I just didn't like it.
Yeah,
it wasn't my.
That's a weird bike. I mean, I remember when those came out, and they said it was going to kind of be like the V-twin Hayabusa.
Yeah.
And it had this ungodly, awful big back tire on it, and they didn't want to go around a corner. They just
it was hard to lean them over.
Wanted to stand back up straight.
Yeah.
It's like.
Yeah. So I did not like those bikes, and it really makes me feel bad because it was my son's bike. He loved it. I would have liked to keep it just for that reason.
Yeah.
But I don't have the space, as you can see.
Yeah.
And
that's kind of an oddball bike. I don't mind them, but it's probably not something I would keep either. But so for helmets, do you run full face, 3/4, half helmet, or no helmet?
Well, what are you talking?
Just in general.
In the old days, it was a Buco Shorty.
Okay.
Now obviously it's a full face.
So you run a full face most of the time? Okay, I do as well.
I do have several 3/4s, like for the BSA when I ride it, I have a British 3/4.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so match the helmet.
Yeah,
for the
I like
bike,
a 3/4. Yeah, nice.
But that was a period.
The 3/4s are pretty popular. They're kind of making a comeback.
Yeah.
I know there's probably several, but what would be the perfect bike for someone to learn on that's just starting out?
Well, to me, I think everybody should learn in the dirt.
Okay.
For one, so something like the little 125 SL, what Sue learned on was a great bike. I mean, they'll go 60, 65 miles an hour.
Yeah.
You could use them on or off the road. It's light, it's nimble, it's, short seat height. Things like that, Rebel, a 250 Rebel.
Something smaller,
whatever. But I prefer people learn on something small, and I prefer that they progress up, whatever. I don't like when
I think that's the case too, and it's hard to really talk people into that because people are going to do what they're going to do. But kind of what I mentioned earlier about a smaller bike is a lot more forgiving. So when you make those beginner mistakes, a little too much speed in the corner.
And the same thing with a dirt bike.
Maybe you chose the wrong line. Yeah. The smaller bikes, it's easier to fix your line or scrub the extra speed even after you're starting your corner.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I 100% agree that people should learn on a
Yeah,
smaller
but
size
if
bike.
you fall down and slide in the grass, it doesn't hurt as much as the asphalt. And I can tell
That
you, I've
is
fallen
true.
down on both, and one hurts way more than the other.
Yeah. All right. So this one, what is the goofiest motorcycle accessory you've ever seen? No, I'm a nitpicker for accessories because I see some stuff and I'm just like, oh god, here we go.
I, I I can't think of any. None. I mean, you asked me. You told me that you were going to ask that question
I know,
before,
yeah,
and I can't think of one. I probably thought it was goofy. I didn't pay attention to it. It's like, okay,
yeah,
wipe it
okay.
out of my mind. I
So,
can't think of one.
all right, that's okay. Um, what is the longest motorcycle trip you've been on?
Probably Chicago.
So from
Oh,
New York
actually,
to
I went to
Chicago and
a
back.
wingding in Fort Wayne, Indiana, one time.
Okay,
And that was a
and,
long trip.
and you rode all the way there and
I rode
back
all
on
the
the
way there
bike.
and back
Okay,
and
cool.
whatever. But I've gone to Chicago to buy a bike and come home.
Yeah, and what kind of drive is Chicago? Like 10 hours or not even?
To Chicago, it's 8.5 hours.
8.5, and then what was the other place you went?
Um, Fort Wayne, Indiana. That was probably 10, 12
10
hours.
or 12. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a haul.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, which is more likely for you to say? It's too hot to go ride, or it's too cold to go ride?
Probably too hot.
Too hot.
I'm a believer in wearing all the gear. I
Yeah. Yeah.
wear an armored jacket. I don't always. I will wear jeans,
Yeah.
but I
No, me
always
too.
wear
Yeah.
boots and gloves and
Boots
full
and
face
gloves and
helmet and my
jacket.
jacket that's armored, but it's
Yeah.
vented.
Right.
I do
Right.
have a
Yeah.
3-season jacket that's not vented when it's colder.
Yeah.
But so when I went to Fort Wayne, Indiana, the time we went there was 110.
Oh, no
Okay,
kidding.
and it was
That is
hot.
hot. Yeah.
So even with the vented jacket on, it's like you're riding in an oven.
It's a lot.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was really warm air. So I
Okay.
would have to stop at every rest stop, take my coat off, soak my undershirt. You know,
Yeah.
it was hot. I didn't like that.
And your Goldwing has heated grips and heated
No, it
seat,
does
or
not
does
have
not
heated
have the
views.
heated accessories,
No.
but you get good wind protection on
You
it
get
at
real
least,
good
right?
wind protection. I'll
Yeah.
ride above 40 if it's not. I mean,
Okay.
I'll wear my gloves and
Yeah.
whatever. And if it's not raining, 40
Yeah.
degrees and above, and that's fine.
Okay. All right, and then the final question is: if you had to choose between a Can-Am Spider and a Harley trike, which one would you have?
I've ridden both,
You have.
and it
Okay. Cool.
depends on the trike.
Okay.
I mean, if it's one with independent suspension, it would be different than the ones that Harley
With
has
the
with the
straight
straight
axle.
axle.
Yeah. Okay.
My buddy has one of those, and I didn't like riding it at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd
Those
have to
push a
pick the
lot too.
Can-Am over that one.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
when you look at the California sidecar trike conversions that they do with the independent suspension,
Yeah.
those are different.
Those are kind of like the top of the line right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
So it would depend,
Okay.
but probably, if it had to be a Harley or the Can-Am, it would be the Can-Am probably.
Yeah, I would probably choose the same because I think at the end of the day, even on three wheels, I would still want to be able to ride pretty spirited in the corners, and the Can-Am's just
Yes.
glued to the road. Where the Harleys, you always got to worry about them kind of tipping over, like the old off-road. Remember the off-road
Yeah.
three wheelers? They
Yeah.
banned them, right? Because
Yeah.
they'd flip over. Well,
Yeah.
Harley trucks kind of got
Yeah.
the same geometry on them,
And
So,
the funny thing about that question is, that is because most of my friends as they got older went to a trike.
sure.
Okay,
And
because they
sometimes
got
you
older.
have to. You get,
Well,
people
my
got a
feeling
bad
is
hip
I'm
or
just going to go to
something.
one of my smaller motorcycles. I got all these motorcycles in the garage, and they're all smaller. I can see myself being 90 years old riding around on my 350.
Yeah.
And being happy.
I believe it.
So
Cool.
I wouldn't go to a trike. I'd just go smaller.
Yeah. I think that's a smart move too. Because two wheels is always the key.
Can't lean on a trike.
No, you can't. And yeah, they're the three wheels is cool for what it is, and for people who need that kind of thing.
Yeah, and if you have to, I don't have any problem with it.
Me neither.
My
Yeah.
buddy, he still has he's disabled. He had a
Okay.
lot of issues,
Sure.
and he has his Softail Deluxe still, but he can't ride it anymore. I know he bought the trike,
Yeah.
and he hates it. He's having a really hard time adjusting,
Yeah.
to that trike, and especially because of the suspension.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
So I feel bad for him, and we didn't ride together at all last year. It was the first time in a long time we never rode once together.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So trying to get safe. I think he didn't want me to ride with him not being the rider that he was or something.
Sure, yeah,
To me, it don't make
no.
any difference.
No, that's
But I
tricky,
mean, I think he
yeah.
felt odd about it.
Yeah.
Whatever, and he
I
wasn't
think
used
that's
to it.
probably normal and
Yeah,
understandable.
yeah,
I mean, I've as we get older, there's less we can do every year, and sometimes it's
yeah,
kind of you gotta just swallow your pride about something, and
yeah.
if somebody's your buddy, they're gonna understand, and
Yes.
you gotta trust that they're a genuine friend, and they're not
Yeah.
friends with you just because you can ride like a hot dog or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So.
I mean,
But well, John, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been great talking to you. I'm gonna get this season put up on YouTube and Spotify, and then if people enjoy it, maybe I'd like to have you back for season 2, if that would be okay.
that would be okay.
Until next time, everybody, ride safe and enjoy the miles.